welcome back to another episode of 30 to Life podcast, where we redefine the Black experience. And today we have a very special guest, and I'm going to skip round today because I want to get right into it. Well, okay, I take that back. I'm not going to skip. You want me to skip?
No,
I skip.
go ahead.
Wait. Well, okay. All right. Here we go. So we have a very special guest. She is multi-talented. She is
busy.
One of the Gen Zers who is transcending work ethic. I would say
making us look bad.
She is a serial entrepreneur.
Kellogg's.
And she's very passionate about technology. And her technology that she focuses on is helping underrepresented groups, right? And she's created a lot of apps. And I'm not going to steal the thunder from her, but the most recent app that she created is focused on Black women's hair. And that is awesome because we are all come from Black women, even other people. And also, I think it's just important that we seize the market back when it comes to grooming, beauty supply, hair, all of those things. So I want to thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for coming on, Asha Christian. You are amazing, and we're so happy to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you guys today.
Yeah, so I want to get right into it because, one, you're 23 years old, and you built a lot of apps. You are crushing it. You're currently in Atlanta, Black Mecca, outside of PG County in Maryland. And so can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that will kind of turn into a bit of a monologue just because I've been around just in the industry for a little while. But I can kind of take you back to my origin story, if you will. My first foray into technology really began in 2014, 2015. And so that's around the time of my freshman year of high school. And it was really the first time in my lifetime that police brutality was a highlight reel in the media. So obviously, police brutality has always been a thing. But it's the first time that I was old enough to really recognize it and to see the consistency of the news stories because I hadn't had a personal interaction just with police brutality. And so my siblings and I have an older sister and two younger brothers, but my older sister and one of my younger brothers and I decided to just come up with a solution to the problem to see kind of what we could do. And I guess we just had, we were big for our britches and we just thought that we could create something that could solve the problem even a little bit. And so we put our minds together and we decided to come up with an idea for an app that would help to tackle or provide some kind of solution to police brutality. And we spent the summer working on an app called 5.0, and 5.0 allowed citizens to rate, review, and track their interactions with law enforcement. And so citizens could download the app, and every time they're pulled over or they interacted with a police officer, they could rate the interaction on an A through F scale. And then what we'd do is we'd aggregate all of the data of the police interactions, and then we'd be able to pinpoint trends and interactions by location. And so then we could say police officers in a certain zip code have a history of negative interactions, and those in a different zip code have a history of positive interactions. So really just trying to bring visibility to just to police brutality in general, so citizens could see it, the news media could see it, and so law enforcement systems could see it. And we started with a Google search of how do you make an app. So we literally didn't really have much of a tech background, but it was really just kind of being audacious and taking a risk and to build something that could solve this problem that we face. And so we built 5.0, we spent the summer developing it, and we contacted this blog called For Harriet, which was like a Black woman's blog at the time. I don't know if either of you have heard of For Harriet, but For Harriet posted us probably a week after we contacted her. And then from there, we ended up kind of going viral. And so I mean, my freshman year of high school, 5.0 did 10,000 downloads in the first month of being on the App Store. We were featured in Forbes, Buzzfeed, Washington Post, New York Times. And it was just really this huge whirlwind while I'm still actively in school. And so we ended up working on 5.0 and growing 5.0 throughout the rest of my high school career. The following year, I actually flew to the Netherlands and I pitched it, and we won $20,000 of funding to continue growing it. we ended up partnering with local law enforcement systems in New York and Atlanta. And then it kind of came time for my senior year of high school. And I just was kind of debating between continuing to work on 5.0 full time or kind of going off to college just to experience life as a college student. And I ended up deciding to see, what the college thing is like. And so we ended up passing off 5.0 to a local nonprofit in Atlanta. And I went off to CS or computer science at Cornell in upstate, very, very cold New York, which was lovely coming from Atlanta. And I spent a year there, enjoyed my time. But after a year, the entrepreneurship bug kind of like bit me again. And I was really impassioned to create or build something that tied my background in tech with just like my love of hair, my love of Black hair, and this problem I've been solving with hair and my hair care for years. And so thus, like, that's kind of how Coily was born, as a combination of like just this tool and this medium I have, which is tech, and my love for Black women and Black hair. And so that's kind of how I got into the creation of Coily, and that's a bit of my background. It's been long-winded, but
I have questions. Take us back to that moment when you were in high school and you had the idea for the app. Take us to that epiphany when you had the idea, and then kind of just go into a little bit deeper into how you developed an app in high school during the summer with your brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
At 14 or 15, like, what?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
14, 15. That's around the right time. So the middle school I went to offered very, very basic code logic, like drag and drop animation programs. One of them was called Scratch programming. For anyone who wants to check it out, it's called Scratch, like scratch paper. And so we had a tiny, tiny bit of just a background within the tech world from that middle school kind of like fun animation course that we had to take because it was like a tech middle school. And so we had a bit of background in tech my freshman year, and we were seeing what was going on in the media. And we kind of were just like, let's throw some ideas on a whiteboard. And so both of my parents are entrepreneurs. They've always been like, if you see a problem, fix it. If you see a problem, fix it. So we that's kind of just how our minds work, right? We always think that we have enough confidence to like actually solve the problems that we're facing in life. And so we literally threw a bunch of ideas on a whiteboard, and we're like, okay, we can do an app for police brutality. We can host organizations and marches. So there were a bunch of different ideas on the whiteboard. But what it really came down to was like, okay, this building an app would, one, be fun, it'd be cool, but it also would be a scalable kind of fix to the problem. We could actually just like collect data. And so it started with Googling literally, how do you make an app, or app builders, web developing, not web and mobile development. And a few searches later, we found some programs that we could use, some basic coding, kind of like programs, intro to JavaScript, things like that. And we kind of started piecing it together from there. So we do the wireframing of the app screens on paper, kind of what we wanted to look like, what we wanted to do. And it really just started building and Googling. And so I'm really into graphic design. Like, I consider myself a creative before everything else. And so a lot of the graphics, the logo, all those kinds of things are made by me. But that's a little bit, I guess, into the nitty gritty of kind of how we got into it.
That's really cool. How much influence, I imagine it would be a lot, but how much influence would you say your parents had on your overall, entrepreneurial spirit, mindset? Do you think it's in your DNA? Do you think it's something that you had to cultivate?
So what I'll see, I think they had a lot of influence in our growth and development in that sense. But what I'd really get into is that I think entrepreneurship is something, above all else, it's just very risky. It's something where you have to be comfortable with like creating something from nothing and then putting it out into the world for it to be judged and to be interacted with. And you have to be comfortable with like overcoming challenges kind of constantly and seeing obstacles as just a bump in the road and not a pointer that you should stop. And all of those things and lessons are things that my parents instilled in us when we were children. And I think that naturally, crossing hurdles, overcoming problems, being able to take risks and being comfortable with failure, those are all things that they kind of ingrained in us in the process of raising us. So I definitely think that they had a huge role in that. And again, they're both entrepreneurs. So and they're both basketball players as well. And so they're really competitive and they're really just like, let's get in there. You can figure it out. You're smart enough. You're bold enough. No one's smarter than you. And so they really kind of instill that confidence in us that allowed us to kind of be audacious.
Your parents are like are probably the most proud people in the world. Like they're very much accomplished themselves, it sounds like. And then you threw the whole basketball in there. Like I mean, wow. Last question. Then I'm gonna let not last question, but I'm gonna let Mookie take it after this one. But you said that you, as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to build something and then release it out there, and then have this, I guess, courageous mindset. Can you kind of talk about that a little more? Because, a lot of people have a lot of awesome ideas, and there's this voice in the back of their head that says, this is not going to work. Nobody's going to like this. Yeah. Like, how did you overcome that, especially at a young age?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that fear is, because that really boils down to is fear of failure, fear of putting yourself out there, fear of being kind of on the line and in front of everyone and being vulnerable. And I think you never really get over or past the fear. I think what it is you learn to understand fear as a natural part of doing anything risky, of taking any big step, of being bold. And so, I guess I kind of have a little anecdote kind of around that. And just to preface it, I'll go into what Coily is. So Coily is the app that I'm currently working on. It's an app for Black women's hair care. It helps Black women find the best hair products and hairstyles and other community members for their unique hair profile. So we essentially come in and kind of organize the Black hair industry. And I can get into more of what it does a little bit later. But in a nutshell, it's a Black girl hair app. And I've been working on it for a few years. And throughout that entire time period, I've always been kind of scared to put it out on the internet and in the media, especially on platforms like Twitter, where I notoriously get 0 likes on my tweets. And so recently, I actually was scared to kind of put Coily out into the world, and I was just like, okay, as an aside, I don't know if I can curse or not, but
you can curse a little bit.
Okay. I just was like, F it, I'll put it out into the world. I'll put Coily on Twitter and I'll see, kind of how it's received. And I had to get really comfortable with the idea that I'll post something that is really held very close to my heart and get 0 likes and get no response and get no feedback. And so I put it out there with the risk of knowing that people might look at it and say, this is terrible, or the risk that people might look at it and say it's not worth their time. And I still felt that fear. It was still very real, but I decided to tweet it kind of despite that. And so I tweeted Coily around 3 weeks ago. I put it up on Twitter and I went to sleep. And the next morning I woke up and we had 600 retweets and we were like near 17,000 likes. And so it's kind of just like a lesson on how much positive can come from you just kind of taking risks and stepping outside of your box and doing things that are different. That are different. And so that fear doesn't really go away, but it's just doing things with the fear and understanding fear, not as a deterrent, but just as a natural part of the process.
So I want to take a deeper dive in terms of the many other apps that you created prior to the Coily app. So one of the things that really piqued my interest is shortly after the 5.0 app, which was featured on Forbes and CNN and all those other places, you decided to do something more community serving based with Guyana. And you co-founded STEMGuyana. Can you talk about that and like what made you decide to create this organization?
Yeah, so just as background, I'm first generation, so I am Guyanese American. I consider myself Guyanese American. Guyana is a Caribbean country in South America, just for everyone who may get it confused with Ghana. I've kind of I've been back and forth between Guyana and America throughout a lot of my formative years. I still have family back in Guyana. And so having been so involved just in Guyana for most of my life and being tied to Guyanese culture and Guyanese people, my siblings and I having this background in tech, having experienced our journey with 5.0, we really realized how inaccessible that knowledge is to people who don't grow up in environments with direct access to technology and to the back end of technology. And we noticed that stark difference, especially when we were in Guyana, which is a country that is just completely under-resourced in general. And so we decided to come together and see if we could create a solution that could bring some accessibility to this kind of developing country and bring this access to technology. And it's really founded upon the idea that the way to solve global issues is to put technology directly into the hands of those who are directly affected. And so when you put technology into the hands of people who truly understand and experience global problems, that's really when you start to find those solutions. And so with STEMGuyana, where we really were bringing robotics, we were taking app development courses, web development courses, programming courses, and putting them in the hands of elementary school, middle school students, where they really are at their most creative, at their most risk-taking, all-encompassing kind of stage. And so we did some fundraising, and we really were heavily supported by adults in the diaspora. So adults who grew up in Guyana but relocated to places like the UK, Canada, the US, who were making money, in these other countries. And they really supported us through a GoFundMe account. And so we raised the GoFundMe account to $10,000 heavily from the diaspora, because the Guyanese community is relatively connected on platforms like Facebook. Once someone shared it, other people were sharing it, and we kind of garnered support that way. And so we were able to fundraise to $10,000 from the diaspora. And then from 5.0, we did have a connection to some people who worked for Facebook within the diversity kind of outreach segment. And so Facebook also sponsored our first summer down in Guyana. And we went down there with some robotics kits and some computers and some laptops and taught 3 camps a day for 6 weeks. And that really was our first foray into STEM and tech in Guyana. And then from that point on, we ended up partnering with the government in Guyana and growing the platform. And then we ended up building an app called the NGSA app, which is the National Grade 6 Assessment app. So how you can think of it is kind of like a, imagine the SAT in the United States that helps students kind of get into college. Well, this test, the National Grade 6 Assessment, is for 6th graders, and it helps to direct them into the high school that they're going to end up going to. And so based on how you score on that test, it directly correlates to the school that you go to in Guyana. And so it's really critical that there are resources available to students of all classes so that they can have a fair and equal opportunity to get into the different high schools. So we ended up partnering with the government of Guyana to develop this app to help 6th graders study for their exams. And that's kind of where the NGSA app came from.
I just want to say that is truly amazing. I mean, when you really think about it, this was 2016 when you created this organization. And yeah, I'm sure that you were still in high school at this point when you created this.
That was, right before my senior year.
So that is amazing, truly inspirational. And you were able to change and create policy within Guyana. So that's amazing.
Yeah. It's been super cool. Oh, sorry.
No, you continue.
Yeah, I was going to say it's been super cool. And even from that, we've been able to tutor and hone a robotics team in Guyana. And we've taken them to Mexico. We've taken them to Dubai. They've been to Washington, D.C. And so they really have been able to integrate into the global kind of tech and STEM scene. So we've really had students who are currently working on oil rigs, partnering with oil companies who are moving into Guyana and are able to take those top engineering kind of positions. So really creating that pipeline for new tech and skilled talent in the country.
What do you envision with STEMGuyana in the next, let's call it 5 years? Because it seems like you did a lot in a short amount of time, but it looks like the sky's the limit with this organization.
Yeah, so the goal really is to grow it and turn it into a program that's scalable. So we have these learning pods that we're rolling out right now, and the learning pods are essentially community systems with air conditioning and laptops and computers and programming courses and access to phones where they can study further on the NGSA app. And so we want to create this scalable kind of learning pod system where other countries in the Caribbean and in developing countries around the world can easily adopt it and implement kind of STEM education into their younger school systems. So that's really the goal, is to create a scalable kind of tech STEM program.
Yeah, I think it's highly important that we get more people that look like us in STEM and tech primarily. It seems like you've always had that before it was even cool to be in tech. Can you talk about the drivers for you to actually enter tech? Is your parents entrepreneurs in tech, or is it just something that who inspired you to actually enter tech technology?
Yeah, so I think it really, because I did attend a middle school that had basic code logic programs, basic code logic courses and classes. And so I took like a really basic animation course. And I think more than anything, I liked what I could create with technology and what it allowed me to do. And I solely learned with tech through projects. So definitely through project-based learning, meaning that I didn't just sit and learn how to program, but I wanted to build an app. And then I learned how to code. I wanted to build 5.0. I wanted to build Coily. And then I started Googling how to build it. And so when you're learning in a way where you're literally just learning tools to get you to where you want to go, that kind of becomes the way that you think about everything in life. And so starting in middle school, when I realized I could create my own animations, when I realized I could create my own videos and my own apps and my own interface and world for other people to play, and for me, my creativity to flow, it really just became another medium for me to create. So I'm also a painter, and I really like sitting for hours and seeing, what colors and strokes I need to put together to create like a full painting. And it's the same thing with programming. It's like, I want to build a Black girl hair app. What things do I need to know? What functionality do I need to add in? What features, and buttons need to be on the page? So it's kind of the same thing. It's really just a medium I used to create over like it being tech within itself.
So you're obviously a highly productive person. What's your typical day like? How do you strategize and get all this stuff done?
Yeah, so I don't want it to seem like I am very productive, but simultaneously it's something that is heavily dependent on my mental health. And so I definitely don't want it to seem like it's always been easy and smooth sailing, because it's not. A lot of Coily up until this point has been kind of on my shoulders. So I am a solo founder, meaning that all of the work and development that went into the platform kind of was from my effort. And so what happens is I go through this period of time where I'm working very consistently and being super productive, and then I crash and I essentially burn out. and I'll have 3 months of just like consistent productivity, and then I just crash and burn out. And so what I developed over time is I really have to invest in my morning routines and making sure that I'm reading and making sure that I'm drinking tea, and making sure that in those moments where I feel like I'm about to get overwhelmed, I stop and ask myself what I need. And then regardless of anything, I'll just spend 2 days like just painting or just baking or just like, doing things that help to feed me and bring me back to center, because if I'm not good, nothing is going to happen. And so I've gotten off the train of toxic productivity. And I've really tried to balance my life out in that regard. So I think that the thing that's kept me going and keeps me going is really investing in my kind of self-care practices and giving myself what I need in those moments where I'm about to shut down.
Yeah. What's your sign?
I'm a Sagittarius.
You're a Sag. Okay.
Yeah. What's your sign?
I'm a Gemini, but you sound just like me when it comes to that, like crashing.
Really?
And yeah. That's why I asked that.
Yeah, extreme.
Yeah, because I'll have like these moments where I'm just like, I'm so like productive and creative, and then next moment I'm like, not next moment, but like maybe like a couple of weeks, I'm like, I hate everyone.
Yeah, literally, it's like, everyone leave me alone. Stop. My phone's on do not disturb. I'm not reaching out to people I don't want to talk. I don't want to go out. And I really try to stop myself from getting to that point, because like I do exist on these kind of productivity extremes.
So your morning routine, from a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say the level of importance is a morning routine for you?
It's like an 8. I would say it's like an 8, because there are some days where I wake up and I just go straight to work because I feel like I'm behind. But I've always struggled with anxiety. So just like running very high, like my anxiety, my nerves just run very high. And so what my morning routine does is it allows me to come back to the center and remind myself that everything's okay. And even if everything today goes to shit, everything's still going to be okay. And so it's super important for me to get my mind at that baseline level where I can start building and creating and just create that blank space.
Do you sometimes find yourself working to not even, I guess, decrease the anxiety, or kind of just working hard to just not even deal with what's underlyingly making you nervous or making you anxious?
Yeah, but honestly, that I found that doesn't really help me with my productivity. It creates a situation where I'm staring at the screen and I think I'm being productive, but I'm really getting nothing done. And then 3 hours later, I realized that I'd gotten nothing done. What helps me most when I'm kind of dealing with an underlying in the background anxiety is sitting with myself and asking me what's bothering me. And then when I ask myself, what's bothering me, typically it's like, okay, I'm worried about something that might happen or that could happen. And then I deconstruct, okay, what's the worst that could happen if that happens? And then usually once I get down to it, the worst that can happen in those situations really isn't that bad. It's not something that I can't recover from.
I'm just amazed because you're 23 and you have such a high level of emotional intelligence but I know women. I know women like mature emotionally a lot sooner than men, but you're you're on this level of wow. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that I'm glad you think that, but I think I've been really intentional in trying to, because this is only work that stems from people, books that I've read and podcasts I've listened to and real work that I've done within the past 2 years. Because I realized that because I run with such high anxiety and because I have such high expectations for myself, it can create a toxic cycle where I'm constantly speaking negatively to myself and also not sleeping and not getting anything done. And so I had to get intentional because I was running myself ragged with these super high expectations and I'm constantly letting myself down. And so really being intentional has helped me to gain my center.
Yeah. So you mentioned books and podcasts. So being a serial entrepreneur, having all these businesses, what resources, books, podcasts did you actually read to get you centered, to get you working more efficiently and removing the toxic productivity that you were doing previously?
Yeah, I think, have either of you heard of Brene Brown before? Oh, Brene Brown is a shame and vulnerability researcher. She's got a TEDx talk that I think everyone should listen to if you have. I think it's 40 minutes long, but it's a TEDx talk on Netflix by Brene Brown. But she's been transformative for me because she's really helped me to embrace showing up, being authentic, not really worrying about failure, because regardless of whether or not you fail, if you have your back, if you can pick yourself back up, you can get through it. And that's actually one of my favorite quotes by her. It's in one of her books called Rising Strong. And in the book, she says, I'm not scared to fall because I know how to rise. And that's kind of been something that's been guiding me on this topic. I'm not afraid to take risks. I'm not afraid to fail because in the end of the day, I know I'm going to pick myself back up and I know I'm going to be okay and I know I'm going to keep going. And so when you kind of take steps forward in faith like that, it helps you to be a lot more centered kind of on your journey. So definitely Brene Brown, all of her books are amazing. I'd recommend her. I also have been reading Bell Hooks, All About Love. That's been transformational for me in terms of just making sure that I'm doing things with a love ethic, with the right intentions. I really love Ben Horowitz's books. He's a VC for A16Z, is his venture capital firm, but he's an investor out in Silicon Valley. And he's got some really great books kind of surrounding leadership, making decisions, showing up. And also my favorite podcast, Super Soul Sundays with Oprah. That's my favorite podcast. And she really helps to kind of bring me back to center. But just people who've been through it and who know kind of what to tell you.
Your second favorite podcast is 30 to Life from now on, just an FYI.
Period. Yes. 30 to Life.
Added to the list. Yeah. So let's talk about the Coily app, because black hair, right? Black hair sets the trends. It is infiltrating American culture. I mean, globally, affecting just how everyone moves, and we don't own any of it. And we're slowly starting to, piece by piece, gain market share. But take us through why you actually created the app and the journey so far that you've had.
Yeah. So I guess I'll kind of start the story with the issue that I faced, which is that I kept buying hair gels that would leave flakes in my hair. Have you guys ever gotten hair gels that leave white flakes in your hair or creams that leave flakes in your hair?
Yeah.
All the
And
time.
so,
All the time.
yep. And so that kept happening to me, honestly. And it got to a point where it was super irritating and annoying. And simultaneously, I actually, I do box braids. So I taught myself how to do box braids on YouTube, and I was doing hair on Spelman's campus because I'm from Atlanta. Spelman is just an HBCU that's close by with a lot of Black girls my age. And
how many times do you have? I'm counting. I think I'm past 10 now.
I was doing hair on Spelman's campus, and it's just like you realize there's so many different types of hair. Some people have thin hair, some people have dense hair, some people's hair is long, some of it's brittle and sensitive, their scalps are tender. And so you begin to realize, one, how unique each head of hair we have is, and two, how many products are on the market that promise to do the same thing. And so really after engaging with this confusion, this kind of like this huge wealth of products that are marketed and targeted towards Black women, I realized that this makes no sense. This is ridiculous. Like even when I go on YouTube, even when I go on Instagram, Twitter, Amazon reviews, regardless of where I go, I can't find authentic product reviews. I can't find anything that helps me to figure out what to do with my hair and what products will work for me. And so this is kind of how Coily was born. And Coily essentially allows Black women to fill out a short hair quiz that assesses 30 plus characteristics that influence their hair. And so that can range from things like, have you dyed it recently, which means your hair may be more brittle, or do you tend to wear your hair in tight styles, which means your edges may have a lot of tension and your hair may be thin. And we create this unique hair ID that allows them to navigate the hair care industry and hair care market with more context. And so therefore you can find products and you can find hairstyles that all match with your unique hair profile. And so it's a community-based platform, and it's the first platform where literally everything you post, every hairstyle you post, every product review you post directly impacts women who are within your hair community. So we're a community-driven kind of AI search engine for the Black hair industry.
So you're like the Google for Black hair.
Yes, and I think even a lot of women kind of related it to the Pinterest for Black hair too, because we do have hairstyles are kind of like our key functionality.
Okay.
And so imagine, I guess the use case I use a lot is imagine if you could walk into a beauty supply store and you could scan the barcode on a hair product and instantly find product reviews and hairstyles where those products were used, all sorted by relevance to your unique hair profile. And so it's basically an aggregate or a collection of all of the reviews and hairstyles where those products were used, all sorted by relevance to the things that matter the most to you. So where do you want your hair to go? What are your hair goals? What hair ingredients have interacted well with your hair in the past? And things like that. That helps it kind of explain what it does. But it helps women kind of gauge how they're going to sell within like 6 seconds.
So what advice would you give to people of color that have an idea, especially they want to create an app of sort? Like what would you, what processes, what steps would you advise them to take?
Well, one, I would say it's not as difficult as you think you would be. So I would just de-escalate all of the anxiety and stress around the mountain that you have to climb to get into tech and to get into app development. There are so many resources out there right now. So I would say start with a simple Google search, start with a little course, and start with project-based learning. So building something that kind of works, building something that you're excited to build. And so I would say it's not as difficult as you think it is. That's number one. The second thing I would say is start by mapping out your full idea on paper, map out kind of what is the grand vision of where you want it to be, what it is you want to build, and just start by building it out on paper. And then from there, that helps you to at least get all of your thoughts out, and then you can start Googling and building from there. But the biggest thing I would emphasize is that there are tons of reasons out there. You can get into app development. There are tons of low code and no code app development programs and software out there right now where people who don't really have much experience in tech can get in and learn and build their own apps without really having to know how to program very well.
So through all of the organizations you created, apps you created, what is advice you would give yourself back then when you first started some of these apps? Like, what is something you wish you would have knew before you started?
So I mentioned earlier that I've always had very high expectations for myself, and I've always been very hard on myself. And really what that looks like is you're not where you're supposed to be, right? Telling yourself that, like, you're not where you're supposed to be. You're not as far along as you'd want to be. And it sounds a little bit crazy when I say it, I think, just, given, I guess, perceptions and things. But I think I would tell myself, like, chill out. You're going to be okay. And I think that's what anyone kind of would look back and tell themselves. Just because there's a lot of anxiety and stress that you add to the process by worrying about whether or not certain things are going to happen. And when I look back, if I hadn't just been worrying, because everything ended up okay, if I didn't worry, I would enjoy my present a lot more. And so what I'm focused on right now is really trying to enjoy the present while I strive for what I want my vision of my life to look like and what I want to grow and the things that I want to build. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I love that. You're working towards your goals, but living in the present. So that's amazing advice. I want to kind of learn, like, as far as lessons that your parents taught you, right? Because they were highly influential to your entrepreneurship journey. What would you say, like, if someone asked, like, what was something that your parents taught you that everyone else should learn? What would you say that is?
I think my parents taught me to, like, be audacious, like, to have the audacity to think that I could create something that would actually solve a structural issue like police brutality, or to have the audacity to build an app that could theoretically help tons of underserved kids in the community elevate in society and create generational wealth, or to have the audacity to think I could build an app that Black women would use to shop, every time they go to shop. And so I think it's just, like, resilience and, like, the audacity to have big dreams and think that you can actually achieve them. Because I think more than anything else, like, it's really difficult to have the faith in things that are completely unseen without any proof. And so for me, it's like I could fail sick. I've applied to various programs with Coily and I haven't gotten into them, and I've gotten rejected. I've applied to, I don't know if either of you have heard of Y Combinator, but Y Combinator is a very popular accelerator program for startups in the tech world. And I applied twice and I didn't get in either time. And so there have been so many times on this journey where I could have been like, you know what, I didn't get in, this is not going to work. This idea, it sucks. This is not going to go anywhere. Black women aren't going to use this. There's so many deterrents that I've kind of faced. And throughout it all, I've had to just believe in nothing but, like, my own faith and my own vision and where I see it going. And this problem that I kind of know that Black women face, but the white men with the money who are investors don't really understand. And so I would say they've really instilled, like, that confidence to believe that you could actually make a difference and you can do something.
As you know, 30 to Life podcast is all about redefining the Black experience. And my question to you now is, how are you redefining your Black experience?
I think by showing up as a Black woman and being authentic and, walking into rooms that with mostly white men with, like, bundles and makeup on and, like, like, looking like, not really trying to fit in, but being very comfortable in being, like, my authentic self. That in itself is a model for Black women and for young Black girls who really want to learn how to just stand up and be themselves, regardless of what any outside kind of structures are telling them. And so to be able to do that in itself is, like, an act of just righteousness and an act of a display of positioning for Black women kind of across the United States. And so I think I'm just redefining it and standing as, like, hopefully as a pioneer for all the Black women who are going to come behind me and feel bold enough to kind of chase after their ideas, regardless of what anyone says.
Yeah, I love that. Being your authentic self. So often in corporate America, or even, in the business world, we had to conform or, be out of body in terms of, like, who we are, right? To fit this stereotype, play to this stereotype, or play to this perception of who we are as a people. And I love that you go into these rooms and you're unapologetically yourself. Right. And a lot of people's not going to like it, but there's a lot of people who will like it. And I see like the change in terms of mainstream media, tech world. We had Black girls do tech here. We had other things. And, if they don't want to give you a seat at the table, you create your own table. And what you're doing is creating that table. And not only are you creating the table, but you're also bringing others to the table as well through your nonprofit, through, Coily, through 5.0. I mean, you created the successful app and then you gave it away to a nonprofit, right? That shows like the testament of, your character and who you is as a person, right? Where it's like your mission over money is really what the focus is, right? And obviously you want to be profitable, but you also want to make sure you have an impact. So love what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job. You definitely inspired myself, Brown, and hopefully our listeners are starting those apps. She has 6, so y'all got to at least get 1. So, so today's the day. So thank you so much for coming. Lastly, where can people find you and where can people find the Coily app?
So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Asha Talia. That is ASHATALIA. And you can find Coily on Twitter and Instagram at Coily at COILY, like Coily there. And you can also find the download link on both our Twitter and our Instagram, so check them out.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. Continue redefining the Black experience. Continue doing what you're doing and lifting others as you climb. This has been an amazing episode, and people, don't be stingy. Give to the needy, and the people need to hear the 30 to Life podcast. It's your boy Mookie.
And your favorite color in the world, brown.
30 to Life. We out.
Peace.